Cool. Well, I don't know if Zoe will make it, but Kristen and I are certainly qualified to talk about any of these questions that we left from last Friday. Yeah, yeah, thanks guys we have so many questions now. So it sounds like the message is getting out. If you've got questions for these calls, please send us those questions. We really appreciate it. Gives us something to talk about. Um, it's so good for everybody too in the community. Your question is most likely a question that somebody else has too. Um, and so you're helping out another teammate by maybe, I don't know, getting a little bit vulnerable and sending us a question about training or life or whatever it is. Yeah, we really appreciate it. I know that you guys take a lot of time out of your day to think about the training and these kind of things. So yeah, it's amazing. And these questions are like really legitimate this the last couple of weeks. And have been very thought provoking for me, Zoe, Drew. Drew won't be here. He had a baby over the weekend, a month early. I don't think we made any announcements on Facebook or not about that, but we'll include it in the Rad Weekend update. But everything's good there. They just got taken by surprise. So they're a little bit busy as well. And well, as usual, Kristen is off on Mondays. So um, yeah, I don't know, Kristen, what do you think? Where should we start this thing off? Maybe with an easy question. I usually like to start with an easy question and work my way in.
I like
Yeah,
that idea. It's been a busy day.
yeah,
Let's start with something easy.
totally. All right, cool. And if you guys have any like responses or follow-up questions to anything that we talk about, yeah, I would really encourage you to use the chat box. And or feel free to speak. You know, it's nice to see so many faces. The last couple of times we've done these calls, it's kind of been like a bunch of just names up here, so it's always nice to feel like we're speaking to to real people rather than you guys are just like listening in on your headphones. Cool. Well, maybe we'll talk about like the most relevant thing I think that's been going on right now. It's like this crazy, we're on like our fourth heat wave across the country. um, and with that, we have a lot of forest fires, wildfires, and that is affecting run quality for virtually everybody on this team who is in the Western United States has at least had one or two runs impacted by the fires. So yeah, we've got a question about um, kind of like what are the expectations for athletes when dealing with the wildfire situation. And so the question is, with the increasing number and severity of wildfires we're experiencing in Western Canada and the United States, um, and air quality being an issue, um, what are the rules of thumb for changing or canceling runs when the air quality gets really, really bad? Um, This is obviously, yeah, thank you. Such a good question. I don't think we addressed that yet this season, but we definitely talked about it last year. Um, Kind of the main rule that we operate on is if the air quality index is 100 or above, do not run outside. Um, and you can usually see the air quality index if you have an iPhone and you go onto your weather app and the air quality is moderate or above, it usually lists what that is. Um, and so, yeah, in
You can
general,
also Google it if you don't have an iPhone. Just Google AQI, air quality index, and a number will pop up.
yeah, thanks, Kristen. Yeah, you can definitely do that as well. So please, I know a lot of you, and I had some athletes last season dealing with the fires that go out and put on like an N95 and go run in worse than 100 AQI. I really don't recommend it. I would encourage you guys to stay inside if it's that bad. If you're unsure of the AQI, um, if the air smells smoky, that's a strong indication that you want to do your run indoors if possible. or maybe switch to cross training or something, but definitely don't exercise outside, nothing more than like a short walk of your dog or something that you like have to get done. You really want to stay indoors. Um, there can be some pretty negative kind of like health associations to running consistently in poor air quality. So I really don't want anybody on this team to risk long-term health for the sake of like an upcoming race or feeling like they're missing out on their workout for the week. These are obviously like circumstances that are well outside of our control. So please, again, like if the air quality is bad, if you can smell smoke, if it's over 100 on the AQI, take your run indoors.
Definitely don't do your hard workouts if the air quality is bad. And I think doing like short, easy runs is okay in moderate air quality. But if it's unhealthy, you know, if it is at unhealthy levels, you should move it inside.
Absolutely.
Or
Yeah.
take the day off.
I like it when people practice taking extra days off because it kind of you sort of reinforce holding your training a little bit looser, which is always a really good practice for everybody here. But again, we have people who over the last couple of years have gotten pretty used to dealing with bad AQI. And so a gym membership, if you can swing it financially in the summer, can be really helpful. Or, investing in a stationary bike and doing some Zwifting or something, Peloton rides.
You can also run on Zwift now.
Yeah. Exactly. If you have a treadmill, pulling it out of your garage, putting it in your house, those are all things that can definitely help. Any kind of cross training that kind of, I would say, aerobic threshold and below. So, easy cross training is going to be helpful for building your aerobic system on a day when you can't go out and run. There's no need to, try to replicate a workout on your bike, or on your ergometer or whatever. Everybody has different kind of indoor cross training vehicles, but again, if you can run on the treadmill, you can do your exact prescribed run on a treadmill in the gym in your house. If the air, that's going to be fine. But I would recommend, if you're going to ride your bike, if you're going to hop on an erg, you're going to do the elliptical, something like that, keep it at aerobic threshold or below to promote aerobic adaptation. That's much better for long-term growth rather than trying to crush a hard Peloton workout that really has no neuromuscular kind of advantage for running, and only will leave you really tired. So yeah, again, please be cautious. I'm not sure, Kristen, if you've been dealing with this in South Dakota at all, but here in Carbondale, we've been getting kind of the smoke again already this season, and we've had a couple days that were pretty questionable. But fortunately it's like cleared out. But that's not the same for all the other athletes on the team, especially.
Yeah. I think even for Midwest states, and I would even like maybe even Eastern states, it's been pretty bad. I mean, I was in my hometown last weekend and ran to a high point and couldn't even see across the river, which never happens. And it just a little bit scary. I know it's worse in some places versus other places, but just yeah, be cautious. And I think that with holding your training loosely, I know a lot of people are really proud of maybe not missing a run for a year or being on some sort of like consistency streak, and that's great and that's fine. But if the quality of the air is going to impact your training, your like physiology, take the rest day. It's not worth the damage to your lungs that could potentially happen from running in thick smoke. Take the rest day.
Yeah, and just really quickly, the reason why you don't want to be breathing in, all of the particulates that are in the air on a smoky day is because, and why it's even worse when you're exercising is because when your breath rate is higher as a result of exercise. You're taking in way more of those particulates straight into your lungs. That ends up in your bloodstream. So you really, really, really have to be careful with this. We don't exactly know what the long-term health effects are, but we have to assume they're probably not great. I'm sure there's at this point some studies on this, but that's kind of beyond the scope of this conversation. But I would definitely, again, be cautious. Please don't force it. No training run is worth you developing a cough or asthma or something as a result of running in really smoky air.
Right. And even some of the studies that have been done and some of like the personal experiences that like we've had as coaches and athletes and even our coach. I know he wrote an article about this 2 summers ago, maybe, but the fact that you can run in like poor air quality, but the repercussions of that are going to be added fatigue, added soreness. You're not going to recover as quickly, things like that. So it's really important to take these things into account when you're deciding whether or not you're going to run outside in bad air quality.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No short-term goal is worth risking your long-term health. The
Exactly.
same rule is like with injuries and anything else. All right, let's move on to something different. I like this question. Zoe, thanks for joining us. You ready for a big hitter question here?
Oh,
a heavy hitter. All right. Well, you're all loosened up from like 25 calls today, so you'll be good to go.
Full on.
All right. We often talk about setting big goals and big dreams, which is wonderful. But I'm currently curious about exploring the other side of that. When might it be time to let go of a big dream? And how do we discern if we are letting go because of wisdom, lack of imagination, lack of effort, extenuating circumstances, or some other factor? Cool.
This is a really good question. Can I start?
Yeah, sure, Kristen.
Okay. Yeah, I think that setting big goals and having big dreams is absolutely wonderful, and that's something that we should all strive to do and to have, like, have these, especially with our coaches, like have goal setting sessions, have those conversations. It's like the Microcosm tagline of like dream big, start small, dream big, and I love that. But I definitely think that there are certain times where you kind of have to like face reality, and if you're putting in the work and everything's going smoothly, then like, hell yeah, let's go for this. But if you're sacrificing sleep, if you're sacrificing your like everything to get to a certain goal, then I think maybe we could take a step back. We could have a deeper conversation about this. But I think that like running is great. It's not everything. You shouldn't wrap your entire identity into just running.
Yeah, I completely agree. And especially you shouldn't put all of your energy and all of your identity into any one goal. Going big for something is huge, but again, holding it loosely like the training, knowing that a number of variables out there can affect the outcome of that goal is really, really important, especially in a running context, a sport that is so fickle with so many impact forces that it's hard to always, as hard as as much as we try as coaches and you guys as athletes, in the feedback process and thinking about your runs and articulating how things go, it's hard to keep track of every single variable. It's not always easy to know which one may kind of derail that process of getting to a big goal. Or sometimes it's hard to discern when you're grinding away at something and not making that progress that you really need in order to go for that goal, and when you have to postpone that goal or step back. And I think that is often why we think about these things as always like imperfect adventures. The goal is always to be consistent rather than to execute something with perfection. We're looking for progress. not kind of an overwhelming emphasis on like doing everything exactly right all the time, because there's so many things that are outside of our control when we're talking about running. And really, like if we want to talk about this in a larger sense, but in life itself, um, so, for any athletes who might be kind of grinding away at a goal and aren't sure, this is the right season or the right time, I would say, don't don't let go of big dreams. Just be willing to be flexible when it comes to those dreams, and be willing to have open and honest and curious conversations about those dreams. I think that in doing so, you can often arrive at your own conclusions about whether or not those things are appropriate at the given time, and whether or not perhaps some more like um, I guess like stepping stones or smaller goals, or like intermediary goals should be maybe injected into the plan in order to help facilitate you getting to a place where those bigger goals seem more achievable. And often it's, in my experience with a lot of athletes, it's not that we need to necessarily entirely let go of a big dream. It's just we need to reevaluate the timeline for
Yep.
getting to that big dream. And so, yeah, the particular athlete who asked this question, this was a very relevant question to his kind of running journey at the moment. And I think that a lot of us, in the illustration of like thinking about running in dreams in the context of injury or persistent injury, um, we can really learn a lot from this kind of stuff. Like, you don't want to let go of your big dreams, because those dreams are huge motivators. They kind of really like fuel and like give you like this, like that stroke for your engine that keeps you going. But at the same time, it's okay to push those things out, and to think about like the smaller steps, because with running, it's very easy to get really wrapped up in like the moment and seeing what everybody else is doing, and all these athletes in Microcosm or elsewhere are like doing these great races and whatnot. And it's hard to really realize like the years of work, all the small steps, the kind of challenges and adversity that's been overcome in each one of those journeys. And we all kind of look at like that, like end result, like, oh, so and so completed Hard Rock 100 over the weekend. Oh my God. But we kind of forget that, like, well, that athlete has run like many 100s before, and like done all of these things before, that kind of were smaller steps that led to this huge goal and like achieving that big goal. And it's the same for everybody, whether that goal is a 5K or that goal is a 500-mile race of some kind. I don't know. Being able to like reevaluate the timeline of that dream, I think, can be really impactful.
Yeah, I always feel like if you're not willing to reevaluate the timeline, then maybe your commitment isn't real. Like if you're trying to force, like, I have to do a 100-miler this season, to me, it feels like maybe your connection to that goal isn't as authentic as you might think.
That's more driven by what
Some external thing,
okay,
rather than like a heart goal.
Yeah, like external validation, or
Yeah.
Often we talk about like picking goals that, if you weren't going to have to tell anybody about it, would you still do it?
Mhm.
And asking yourself that question. And I think that's a really valid and important exercise when thinking about, what you want to do with your running. And it's okay to not have like an answer to that. It's okay to not be like, I know I have to push this big dream back a couple of years because of where I'm at right now. I know my body isn't handling the training well, and we have to do X, Y, and Z in order to get to point A to start that journey. But I think it's really vital as an athlete to be comfortable with in a place where you don't have a big goal. It's okay to not have a big goal, or it's
In
okay.
fact, if you have to have a big goal, I think that is something worth approaching with curiosity. Because if you need to feel like you have to have something to always be working towards, potentially there's a more sustainable motivation we can tap into. Because the reality of life is that there is no arrival, there is no endpoint, there is nothing you can do that will ever make you feel whole or valid. You have to do those things for yourself in very small ways every single day.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's interesting too. I know I think it was Addie Bracy who said, you know, like hold it lightly, and taking that into consideration. And like, I think about that often where it's like, am I holding this lightly? Am I holding this too tight? And just kind of like making your decisions based off of asking yourself those really hard questions.
Yeah. And it's hard to be honest with yourself. Scott mentions here, losing the ego, and learning to reframe things. I think, vital part of the process, right? Like as runners, if many people on this call are ultra runners or have dreams to run an ultra, which makes you an ultra runner in my book. I think that, it's just so important to remember that these things have to be deeply personal. The goals have to connect to your value system, to the way that you want to live your life, and all of these things. And if that's true for you and very authentic part of your process, it's a lot easier to reevaluate your goals, to extend your timelines, to be open and flexible, or to spend time in space where you don't have like a big goal on the horizon, and you're just focusing on the process and developing your running, improving as a runner, all the things that help set you up for your big goal to be successful later. And I think that that's such an interesting thing about this question. It's something that, I know the three of us see a lot with bringing on new athletes onto the team is almost the reason for the majority of people joining Microcosm is because they have a race they need support with. They need a plan or guidance, or they've gotten to kind of a crossroads in their own in their self-prescribed training, and so like they're usually like 8 weeks from a big race and they need help, and 8 weeks isn't much time to help somebody. To be completely honest, 8 weeks is nothing. An athlete,
you can't take a puppy home after like 8 weeks.
No. And so it's not that, there isn't something that can be done, and it's mostly just supporting the athlete, and getting them to do some consistent training. But the big work happens over years. And so, I think in the context of like, sometimes it's better to not have a goal. If you really want to be great at this, sometimes it's better to just take some space without a big goal. Or I have a big goal. I would like to one day run 100. I'm not going to say when that is yet. I'm not going to say if it's this year or next year or in 3 years. Right now, I want to improve as a runner so I can get to the point where I can train for 100 adequately and then complete 100 without eking it out or without risking my own health or my long-term potential. These are things that the conversations that I'm having like weekly with my athletes, because it's really hard. Running is such a fickle sport. And when you start with an athlete where you don't have a lot of history working with them, you've done a call with them, you have some check-ins with them, you're learning who they are, they're learning you about your coaching strategy, methodology, and feedback. It's a very new process. So it's hard to give, to give it all right away. And that's not a good description of what's happening. But it takes time to foster the relationship and build towards the goal. It's this, it's very, very important to slow things down. And I think sometimes with athletes setting big goals and then having an injury set them back, almost always that's an eye-opening experience where huge perspective shifts happen, and athletes are able to kind of loosen the grip or lose the ego a little bit, or kind of look at their goals and be like, oh, wow, I was really going for this 100 because I just kind of wanted to post about it on Instagram so my friends would be impressed with me. And it's like, yeah, I mean, we've all raced for those reasons, but over time, the races should become more personal to you. And therefore, you're able to give more training. You're able to broaden and lengthen the timeline so your training is, and your preparation is better, and therefore the race outcome is usually better too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really like, to Zoe's point, I really liked the idea of not having, like being okay with not having a goal and really trusting in the process. I think that that's something that maybe we could all unpack a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Because, I think that was something we all learned a lot during the pandemic, is that if the only reason that you're able to get your daily run in is because you're doing a 50K, when that 50K goes away because of like an act of God or a pandemic, or you get hurt, then like, where is your motivation coming from? And if you're always looking to those external sources rather than stoking that fire within, then when those external sources get taken away, you're going to fall, like your motivation, your consistency, all of that's going to fall flat. And the better you're able to motivate and commit from within, the better you'll actually do at those external things as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, and Caitlin mentions it, sometimes when you take the timeline out, you take some pressure off yourself. You often end up being more prepared sooner than you think for something that you're interested in the future. And now there's kind of another side to this that I think is worth mentioning, and it's that if you are always training and you never have the courage to put your big goal down in the training log, if you never have that courage to do that, all you've ever done is just train. So it's really important to find kind of some moments to celebrate the work that you're doing, whether you're in an extended period of base building or you're building economy and you don't have, an A race for many months, or, some of us went like a year without doing an A race over the pandemic and whatnot. And that's very, very normal at this point. But, I think a lot of us were very, wise in making sure that we injected some kind of focused efforts into the training to celebrate the work that you're doing, to calibrate kind of where you're at, both for an athlete and for a coach. Because if you only train, then it was only ever training. And I think that kind of takes some of the fun and the joy out of the process too.
And racing can be really good training. So like at a certain point, if you never hit those efforts, and like if you never race a 15 miler, race a 20 miler, 50K, like those days are really positive and productive training. So even if you're like, oh well, I just want to stay really consistent in my training, like I love getting better, which like I know a lot of athletes have that mindset, you're actually missing out on an important occasional training stimulus by not racing.
Training is so awesome. There's
Training
so
is so
many ways to
awesome.
do it.
But again,
Yeah.
like when you race the correct amount for your body and life goals and needs, like you get a nice taper and you get a recovery period, and in the middle of that you get a nice big stimulus, and those are different than anything we can just simulate in training.
Yeah, it's so true. I think that's why we, you, me, and Kristen and Drew and Kylie often like to do kind of a race before our biggest race, just to kind of get the race jitters out, to kind of have that like rehearsal before the big day.
Absolutely.
Feel
And
like
I think
hard efforts like.
I think that if there are any questions about like race day being incredibly stressful or anxiety inducing, the way to counter that is to race more often. So you're less likely to freak out. Like it's a little bit more normalized to like get into the swing of things, have your morning routine, have your pre-race routine. So it's not so big and scary when you do have when you finally do have your A race.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And whether that's like a local 5K or like a super short, I don't like a 10-mile trail race, whatever. It doesn't have to be a 50K every weekend or every time you race. It doesn't have to be this huge thing. It can be small, like a trail series or a local community race, things like that. But just like getting yourself used to the feeling of racing.
Yeah. And I think now that we're talking about racing, I want to use this as an opportunity to segue over to another question that we got about community. Because I feel like the race experience often, at least for me and other people that I know and that I coach. Okay, thank you, Zoe.
Technology malfunction.
The like a race experience can also be like really uplifting because of the community aspect to it. And it's something that I know a lot of people really missed during the pandemic, us included. Um, so yeah, here's a question about community. It goes, I often benefit from understanding the larger community I'm a part of. What do you see as making the microcosm community a community? What seems to hold us together? How many are we? Where are opportunities for us to grow as a community? Wow, a community builder must have developed this question. Yes, great. So why are we a community? I think I'll start with my answer on this, and then would love to hear from Zoe and Kristen. Wish the other coaches were here too. But we're a community because we all have a commonality. We love running, and so that initially that like brings us together. And I think the second kind of pillar to that is that we all benefit from support, and it's not just that we're coaches supporting you guys. We get support through coaching you guys, and that's not financial support. That's like a motivational support, and an inspirational support that we kind of receive, and also that we're a coaching community. There's 5 coaches on our team, and we all are supporting each other in this process as well. So yeah, I think like the pillars really to me are the commonality in that we all share running. And the second piece is that we all benefit from that unconditional support that we offer each other.
For me, microcosm is a culture of excellence, and I see, and I mean, this is something that you see like over and over again in scientific research. Like, you will be very similar to the people you surround yourself with. Like, if you surround yourself with people who smoke, you are exponentially more likely to smoke yourself. If you surround yourself with people who are kicking butt in training and life and parenting, like, you're going to kick butt in all of those things as well. So for us, it's about creating a community of people who are trying to be their best selves in a bunch of areas of life. And it's something that like I absorb from my athletes. That's something I absorb from Kristen and Drew and TJ and Kylie. It's something that I hope that I can project to them and to my athletes as well. And it's about creating this culture where people are empowered, enabled, and equipped to achieve in the ways that matter to them, like whether that's running, professionally, personally, like whatever metric that they're looking to get better on. Like, we want to provide that place where you're allowed to say out loud or in your log, like, I want to be great at this thing. And you're going to have someone who hears you, takes you seriously, and is going to help you take actionable steps towards those things. And it's about knowing that horizontally you're surrounded by people who are doing the exact same thing at whatever they care about. And when you see other people, whether it's in the Rad Weekend update and they're achieving things in races, or you get to hear, celebrate new parents, celebrate older parents, celebrate people with career wins, like whatever it is, like when you are around people who are chasing down, not like achievement in terms of like being on like the, hamster wheel of professional success, but when you know what matters to you and you strive towards it and you surround yourself with people who are doing the same thing in their lives, you're going to be a lot better equipped to get to where you want to go on your own journey.
That sounds kind of like the glue that holds us together in terms of this question.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. That was awesome, Zoe. That was so well thought. Yeah. Kristen, I'm curious, what are your thoughts?
I think it's not necessarily a matter of like how are we a community, but like why are we, or like why are we a community? How are we a community? I think that like inherently people look for community in the people they surround themselves with and the people that they care about, and they prioritize those things, and they kind of decide what makes them feel good, and you kind of want to like keep putting those opportunities in front of you, and so I think that empowered people empower people. And when I see the Rad Weekend updates, I get psyched to go out the door. Like, I almost didn't run yesterday. I was so like, there are so many times where I've been like so stressed out or so anxious about something. And then I get on Strava and I see a run that TJ did, or, saw that Kylie's running again after a little bit of a health scare. And it's just like, hell yeah, like I'm out the door 5 minutes later. So anytime there's like a question, I know that the community to me is defined as like a group of people I can rely on to show up for myself the same way that you guys are showing up for yourselves, and to be the best version of myself that I can be. Because I'm truly someone who believes that like you can't pour from an empty cup. And so to be the best version of myself needs to be a priority so that I can give that to my athletes.
Totally. And that's the whole point of all of this, and why we do, and why this, why this exists. Oh man, battery power here. Yeah. I mean, there is just, I don't know. There's just so much, that it got tripped again. Sorry. We have a lot of difficulties today, and this is just a tough day. There we go. I think that like inspiration that exists, or like that helps keep us all accountable. Even as coaches, like we talk a lot about like building habits and routine and making everything second nature. And, we're all experiencing these things in the same way that you guys are. We might just happen to have a little bit more expertise or like life experience, at least in the running side of things, so we're able to kind of direct and guide you guys along your journeys. But that accountability that exists within in the community, I think is really, really powerful, right? Like Kristen and Zoe both mention it. It helps to like get us out the door when we're having, days, and we have them, it's just, that just is what it is. Don't put us on pillars, on pedestals. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's hard being put on a pedestal sometimes, especially when you're having a bad day or a bad week or a bad month, or like anything can happen. We're all human. But I definitely want to highlight something that Kristen just brought up in the chat about getting team shirts. And Zoe?
We are fully aware that people want the team shirts. We cannot handle any team shirt inventory. This is I love it.
It's a real estate question.
We don't have the room for it. The hats, we had one closet. It took up all the space. We're moving next week. Maybe in a couple months we'll be able to we'll have room for the inventory.
It sounds like buffs are in the works, though.
Buffs are happening right now. So in about a month, we're going to have buffs on the website.
But we do want to get shirts.
We would love to do the shirts, but it's really challenging when you're in a 450 square foot apartment
and
to
also
have
your
dog
loves
size run
eating
and
hats
everything.
And shirts.
Yeah. Also, Bowie took down quite a bit of the hat inventory when she was a puppy.
If she didn't
Not
get a hat,
good for the bottom line.
Blame Bowie.
Right. And then maybe we can get screen prints like K Chow. We can both be K Chow. Just, team spirit.
We will do it.
It is in the works. It's been in the works for a while.
Quite some time. Our apologies for those of you who are anxiously waiting. We are working on it as hard as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for being part of the community. You don't need a shirt to prove that you're in the community. Just sign on to the Facebook group and read that Rad Weekend update. I go back at least twice after I've spent an hour writing that and putting that whole thing together every single week, and look at it again, and almost before my long runs. And I'm just like, wow, look at what all these people are achieving. But it's not just the achievements. It's like everything that each individual person has worked through to get to that kind of finish line. And that's just that's not even a real finish line, right? It's like
the tippity tip of an iceberg, and then below it's this big beautiful person who's worked for years and overcome so much to get there.
It's so inspirational.
I like thinking about it as though it's like Hetch Hetchy, and you just see the surface of the water, and there's a stick or something, and there's just this huge canyon below it that no one ever sees. But I mean, sometimes also all of the athlete logs are confidential, but I sometimes I just wish that some of the athletes could see other athletes' logs, and just, a lot of people go through similar things at similar times. And a lot of people just have very similar perspectives about things. And in those moments, they feel isolated or alone, but everyone's kind of going through a parallel scenario. And it's interesting to, glean some insights from those
Yeah,
updates.
and that's like the commonality, that exists amongst all of us here. So many people we were working with people around the world from very different backgrounds, very different places with very different jobs. But there are a lot of parallels to be drawn from the life experiences that everybody on this team has. Journeys in running, they often are very similar. Like as coaches, we often repeat the same guidance or the same advice just at different times for different people, because many of us are on similar journeys, just we're at a different point in the timeline. And it would be sometimes beneficial to be able to take a snapshot from somebody's log and be like, hey, look at this athlete. They overcame something so similar. You are not alone in these struggles. Like, you are enough right as you are right now. And it's unfortunately, like, the journey, sometimes the hard work is really done by each individual. And even when you tell somebody like you're not alone, like, so many people have gone through that. It may not even be helpful to say that, because in that moment sometimes, like, the struggle is super real. Everybody knows it who's been in a struggle or had a challenging conversation with a partner or a boss, or had an adverse situation at work or experienced a setback. Everybody knows what the suck feels like. It doesn't have to just be in your run, on your long run in a race. Like, we all know what it feels like. And at least for me, it doesn't always help to know that other people have gone through this. It just helps to, like, maybe just say it, like, it sucks right now and I'm working through it, or whatever that is. And just having the space to put it out there can be beneficial too, more so maybe than like the community thing. But it depends on the individual. That's why we don't just, like, you know prescribe a plan to get you to your race day and then celebrate you on Facebook when you complete your race. It's like why we support you along the way too, because it goes both ways, right? Like, we give the athletes, we're trying to give the athletes the best support we can so they reach their goals, and their goals inspire the other athletes to continue to push in their goals and to work through the challenges.
Yeah. And I will say too that, like, as a coach, sometimes when I see updates with like mental breakthroughs, not so much physical breakthroughs, that's also a huge win to me, because I think this sport is just as like mentally challenging as it is physically challenging. So when someone tells me like, I love who I'm becoming, I loved who I was today on my run, I'm becoming the person I want to be, things like just saying that out loud just gave me goosebumps. Like, things like that are so amazing to hear and just like uplifting as a coach. And then I feel like that energy is just reciprocated. So it's just, I don't know, that's like one of my favorite things about coaching, is moments like that.
Yeah, I feel that. I totally feel that in my own coaching as well. Well, awesome. I hope this helped to answer the question about community. Um, and of course, like everything else we do, it's always evolving. So who knows where we will be in another year or two, and how we will grow and how we'll become stronger. But I'm interested in seeing where it all goes. Okay, how about a question about training to end the call? Recovery question. What do we know about the amount of about time and recovery? What do we know about time and recovery? We are very precise with prescribing our workout durations and intensities, but less so with prescribing recovery. What makes 24 hours or 48 hours the typical amounts to use in the appropriate amount of time to adapt to a specific stimulus?
That's a great question. The answer is that it wouldn't if everyone on here was an Olympian that like didn't have a day job and could just sit in squeezy pants and drink smoothies all day, like, yes, we would definitely be prescribing probably more specific recovery times. But if I tell a single mom with like a job or two that she needs at least 27 hours of recovery, she's gonna be like, yeah, great, awesome, thanks, such good feedback, I can't wait to execute that. Recovery needs to make sense for your actual life. And like, yes, while, you know, if you got into the minutia of like, here's like the exact point where you would probably be recovered from this, like we could probably look at your historical heart rate data and we could approximate when you'd be recovered. Like your recovery is going to change day by day. So it's not useful for us to give you a specific amount of hours, because like, unless I know exactly how many calories you eat for breakfast, what your bowel movement looks like, what your resting heart rate is, who you talked to on the phone today, like how your mom's doing, like what shoes you're wearing, then it's just not going to be like all that meaningful.
Right. Or you wouldn't be able to be as specific with it.
Yeah.
And I think that,
so like we're approximating no matter what is what I'm saying.
Well, most training is approximation.
It's all very approximate.
I think there's some interesting stuff here though, you know, regarding like, you know, 24 to 48 hours between efforts. You know, we don't have to be so precise. Like, for example, we do our workouts generally in the middle of the week, right? So you do an easy day, a workout day, and an easy day after. And there's 2 days in between your workout and your long run. And there's a reason why there's 48 hours between your long run and your workout. And that's because you need 48 hours. General kind of training principle is 48 hours between hard bouts of work. For most athletes, unless, you know, very specific training adaptation, unless we're looking to provoke very specific training adaptation.
And that's why if you miss your workout, you don't just do it on Thursday and think you've done the training correctly, or you don't just throw in your long run on Tuesday because you felt like it. Like we are like, there is intention behind these things.
Of course there is. We spend a lot of time making the plans and hope that you guys stick to them as best as you can, considering all the things going on in your lives.
I think we've referred to this before as like, as coaches, we are stress distributors. Yeah. And there's like a reason why we have you do things on certain days.
Yeah, totally. And there's a reason why, you know, you have a certain amount of recovery after each, you know, interval you do, and, you know, all of those things. But, you know, just general rules, you know, 48 hours between hard workouts. Sometimes can be even, there's a reason why, you know, if you do a really hard workout on a Wednesday, generally you're not going to have on Saturday a long run with a lot of prescribed intensity. It's probably going to be a long run, but that's just easy. And that's because if you do a really, really hard workout, you might need more than 48 hours to recover. You know, it depends on each specific athlete and your training history. The more advanced an athlete is, the more workload they need to provoke an adaptation. But for an athlete who isn't as advanced or doesn't have as much running history, a lot less work is required to get you to adapt to a specific, you know, training protocol. So, yeah, it is, you know, you want to manage your recovery time as best as possible. Kind of like we'll mention like Coach Drew, he always talks about like you do the work and then what you do after you've done the workout is all preparation for the next run. We want these runs to be quality that reinforces, you know, good neuromuscular adaptation and efficiency and biomechanical efficiency. That's going to help you become a better runner with time. You know, the more recovery time you have, obviously the better. There are ways in which you can start to gauge your recovery if you want. People like Whoop. People like to do things to help with their, you know, lower their resting heart rate or get their heart rate variability to come back up quicker with some diaphragmatic breath work and things like that. All of those things can be done, you know, after your training. There's numbers of different articles on that.
The greatest thing about recovery is that all the best, most scientifically proven methods of recovering better are free.
Yeah.
Except for food. Food's
sleep,
not free.
Eat.
Sleep. Food. Meditate.
Yeah.
Those are the, yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't need a Whoop. You don't need squish. I mean, if you want a Whoop, great. Squishy pants, don't really need it. You don't need a sauna. Don't, you know, if you're spending money on recovery to the detriment of actually recovering well, that's something we see a lot. Frequently. Not infrequently.
But, you know, I would, yeah, again, like focusing on your sleep, meditation.
Yeah, focus on the basics.
You know, if you don't have time to meditate, breath work, 5 minutes, 4-7-8 breathing, proven to help with your heart rate variability. It's really, really important for athletes after a tough workout. You can gauge recovery with how quickly you get back to a normal state of heart rate variability. So diaphragmatic breath work and kind of getting your parasympathetic nervous system to re-engage is a really big part of that. We wrote a blog post on meditation. I would definitely encourage you guys to look at that. Also great for stress management. Yeah. Feel like I don't want to squeeze in another question
Not in 2 minutes.
in the last 2 minutes, but yeah, thanks everybody for being patient with us today and for tuning in. We've got a lot of great questions for Friday, and really look forward to continuing to dive into some of this stuff. We have another question on recovery that I'm looking at right here. We've got a question about wildlife and trail safety, which I'm always scared of animals when I'm out there. So
Moose.
I'm not alone.
Terrifying.
Yeah, but thank you guys. We'll post this to YouTube. Yeah, I hope you guys have a great week. We're looking forward to another amazing Rad Weekend update with some really cool accomplishments that are just incredibly inspiring to me and all the other coaches. So guys, keep up all the good work. Everybody here is doing such a good job. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good night.